What's up, everyone? It's Books and Looks TV. Today I'll be talking about The Bougie Friend. I'll be looking at popular characters and films who often play the bougie girl trope. My first character I'll look at is Moesha. Now, Moesha was a high school teenager who grew up in Crenshaw. She came from a well-to-do two-parent household. To me, she was more well-off than her friends. And what kept I think people interested in Moesha was that she looked like us. She had stylish braids, outfits, and she had black friends, and she was pretty much Afro-centered too. Now, her parents meant well by her. I feel like because she was the only girl and because of the death of her mother, they often coddled her, especially her father. But Moesha was a bit bratty, in my opinion. And I know a lot of you would say, well, that's a typical teenager, but I really didn't like how she treated her friends. As an adult, I looked at the show again and I was pretty much put off. So, for one instance, Kim, who was her best friend in the show, was pretty much seen as undesirable. Moesha often reminded her of that when she would be interested in a guy, and she would fat shame her, which in my opinion was not cool. Now, Hakeem also had financial troubles, and sometimes Moesha would try to be there for him, but in other times she would get into his romantic interests, and I feel like she should have minded her own business because she had a lot of boy problems that she couldn't solve. But again, Moesha often wants to fix everybody else's problems but her own. Now, one particular instance I didn't really mind, I just didn't like how she was hypocritical, was when Hakeem was pursued by an older woman and he told her, and she was just saying, "Oh, that's so wrong. She's preying on you." But meanwhile, she was also interested in her teacher, and it was very inappropriate the way that they were together. And I'm not blaming Moesha for that, but I'm just saying she had those same feelings. And I feel like she could have approached it in a different way. But that's how Moesha was. She often tried to throw a stone and hide her hand, but there were other times where Moesha was very supportive, and one scene I really liked was when she supported Kim when she was trying out for the cheerleading team. Even though Moesha did want to be a cheerleader, Kim actually made the team, and instead of Moesha making it about her, she actually gave Kim a lot of praise and stood by her. So I respected that. But overall, I felt like Moesha was fake, and the only time she was real was with her diary. Next up is Willie Gilbert. Gilbert, excuse me. Willie, she was the daughter of HBCU alumni graduates, and she went to a HBCU. She was what a lot of people would call a Southern Belle if Black women were considered a Southern Belle. Whitley was very engaged in her institution, and she often let people know about who she was, and she had high standards. Now, often when she had a roommate, Whitley wasn't very social. She was pretty much territorial and let people know in a lot of ways how they were beneath her. Whenever Whitley was kind of decent, people would praise her. Whitley did become friends with Kim, who was very intelligent and a pre-med major, but even with Kim, she would often or sometimes fight. Now, there as Whitley grew older, she did become more mature. She became actually a GA or graduate assistant, and she pulled a college freshman to the side and let her know that her domestic violence situation wasn't okay and how she should cherish her body and spirit, and she tried to uplift her, which I pretty much acknowledge. I think what knocked Whitley down a lot is when she decided to marry Dwayne. Dwayne was an average college professor. He was a math professor, but Whitley was going to marry a prestigious man who was a politician, Byron, but she gave it up for Dwayne. I feel like that made her more likable to a lot of people, but I don't think it helped her social status at all. Next up is Molly. Now, Molly was a lot like Moesha. Molly came from a two-parent home where she idolized her family, but Molly, I think, slowly realizes that her life isn't perfect. Though she is a successful attorney, she often tries to fix other people's problems, specifically Issa, and when she can't, she feels a bit out of place and sometimes resentful of her friends. Molly, I think, is a great person. She, like a lot of the bougie women on my list, are very particular with men, which I think isn't really bad. But I think she could be a better friend to Issa, and I think that her image of love is the false narrative she had of her parents, and in the show, she actually found out her father did cheat on her mother, and I think she was broken by that. I think that oftentimes, we realize the flaws we have as people, and sometimes when we address it, we can help each other heal. But before we get into that, let's talk about Regine. Regine was a character off Living Single. Regine lived in the brownstone with a bunch of other single women, one of them being her cousin Khadijah James. I feel like Regine was very relatable, down to earth. She often would hang out with the other girls. She was a boutique buyer and she had high standards for men, but I don't feel like she really dissed her friends too much. I mean, when she had a date, she would be like, all right, I'm out, because she was always trying to level up. But I think Regine was like one of the most decent bougie friends on these shows. And next up is the notorious Toni Childs. Now, Toni Childs' name says it all. Maybe Childs can be related to petty or immature because she was a bit. Now, Toni resented poverty. Toni never wanted to go back to her rural town and live an impoverished life. And she was a real estate agent. Oftentimes, I feel like she could have been a better friend. She would not acknowledge the great things her friends would do sometimes, and often like small things when they couldn't be there for her. There was a scene where Joan had went out to buy a car, and just because she forgot about Tony's event, Tony threw a tantrum, and then you slowly get to see more and more of Joan setting boundaries and pushing her out of her life. One thing that really bothered me was when Tony would mispronounce Jabari's name. I feel like that's really trifling and anti-black. And speaking of anti-black, I feel like that could be related to class. I remember a scene where Tony said she didn't want to date a man or marry a man who was too dark because she didn't want to have dark skinned children. And she kind of talked about too how growing up she was like bullied for being dark skinned. I think all of these shows pretty much teach us the importance of friendship regardless of class, and how we should value our friends and help them elevate with us, or just not be friends at all, but not to be in toxic relationships. As a great woman once said, Black women should be supporting each other. That would be Joan, even though she was problematic in her own ways. I think that was true in a lot of ways. Again, thank you for listening to Books and Looks TV. If you like this type of commentary, be sure to subscribe. Peace.